Joined on the phone lines, he has been covering NASCAR since 1980, the president and co-anchor of the Performance Racing Network, also part of the board of directors of the National Motorsports Press Association, the one and only Doug Rice. Doug, welcome to the show. How are you tonight?
Thanks a lot for having me on. I'm against a triumvirate of race people, so I love that.
Absolutely. Pleasure to have you. Crossed paths many a times at some of the local tracks that we see you at, New Hampshire, Bristol. Always a pleasure. Great to connect and jump right into things. Obviously, we're going to talk about this past weekend and the past 2 weeks of NASCAR honoring you. But first question I always like to ask, Doug, how'd you catch the racing bug?
My brothers took me to the Coca-Cola 600 in my early 20s. I really wasn't much of a racing guy. I've always been a radio guy. I've always loved radio. And they drugged me down to the race, and we watched it in the infield of Charlotte Motor Speedway, and I went like, okay, I get it. I get why they like it. And the hook was set, and I've been a race junkie and fan ever since.
So 36 years. This is going to be your swan song this year for the Performance Racing Network as you're going to head off into retirement. What has it meant to be in the sport for as long as you have, and just the enjoyment that's come along with the job you have?
Most days it doesn't seem like work. I would be lying if I said there weren't challenges. The administrative side of having one time being GM and president and now just president of the network, those kind of things, they get weighty. Going up to the booth and calling races, never. Love that, have enjoyed that. It has been a great source of pleasure for me. So it's all been good. Watching the changes through the sport, I was here in the absolute heyday of the late 90s and early 2000s and watched it just but the heights of those times were artificial. A lot of people just hooked on to NASCAR. Wow, this is cool. And they went to races for a couple of years, and then they went to the next cool thing. But it's been a wonderful ride.
So for those who might be listening who might not know the difference, the SMI track, Speedway Motorsports Incorporated, that's Charlotte, Bristol, New Hampshire, Sonoma, Texas, Charlotte. Those are the tracks you call the broadcasts.
Vegas,
exactly.
Circuit of the Americas, Atlanta, yeah. We've got 8 of the tracks, and the rest of them outside of Indy are NASCAR tracks.
Correct. So you got to do something that you haven't done, and that was call some of the laps of the Daytona 500 this year recently. Talk to us a little bit about that experience and joining the Motor Racing Network for that.
Well, it was wonderful. It was very gracious of them to offer me a chance to come over. I had let it be known I would love to do this. This is something, before I get out, that I don't like the word bucket list, but this is a box I want to check. I want to go and call a few laps of the Daytona 500, and their folks over there, Chris Schwartz, Ryan Horn, were nice enough to say, well, come on down, we'll put you in the booth, and we'll, give you a little bit of time to do it. And I was received genuinely. The guys that were in the booth, I know all of those folks. We've all worked around each other for years. And so they made me feel really good. That is our sport's biggest race. And to be able to say, yeah, I called a few laps of that is really nice. So hats off to MRN for asking me to come. And it was a big deal. And I've had a great career. It would have been a great career if I hadn't got to do that. But the fact that I got to do that, that's a nice cherry on top.
Speaking of calling big races, in 2015, you got to do the Indy 500 and the Coke 600 in the same day as a broadcaster. Now, we've seen drivers do that a handful of times. How was your experience being in the booth for both of those events?
Well, I was on pit road for the Indy 500. I started out doing Elio Castroneves' pits because Shell Pennzoil paid for this little extravaganza. And then after I called 2 of those, I said, well, move me down on pit road to some place lesser. I don't want to take a spot of one of your regular pit reports. I don't need this premier spot, which was Elio. And so they told me, they said, well, move down pit lane and take everybody from Juan Pablo Montoya on down. And on down are drivers that most you've never heard of for the most part. But Juan Pablo Montoya turned out winning the race that day. So, that was an unexpected gold nugget and wonderfully fun. I was up there for 3 days, along with Alexis Erickson, who was kind of chronicling that for PRN that day. So that was wonderful. And then they put us on a private jet, got us back to Concord, North Carolina. The best part of the day was we helicoptered from the Concord Airport, which is like 5 miles from Charlotte Motor Speedway, landed at Speedway, got out, and went up and called the Coca-Cola 600 that day. So of the things that I've gotten to do, and I feel like I've touched a lot of bases, that was the singular coolest thing I've ever gotten to do.
Building up on cool things, Doug, how cool is it that the sport itself has changed? When you first started, you were probably they were all probably auto mechanics and gas station owners and all this coming to watch, and now it's evolved where you have Michael Jordan owning teams and these professional entertainers all coming and being involved. How much? And I say that's all from you guys because you were able to tell the story to the people. But how much has it amazed you how differently the crowd's changed from start to now?
It is different, especially the ownership group. We're all legacy people that had been in stock car racing way before I was interested. But you went around and we toured all the facilities on the media tours, and they were all the similar stories. People that had been in the game for a long time, had some success, built a race team. And now that's not quite all the case. You've got Michael Jordan, who's paired with Denny Hamlin. You got Justin Marks and Pitbull with Trackhouse and other people coming into this. And they just follow the heat. They ride to the sound of the guns, and they know that NASCAR's got a certain appeal. Is it a mass appeal like the NFL? No, nothing is. But it's very solid. We get good ratings, and I think for the first time in a long time, at least my impression is that our demo is growing younger. For a while, I felt like everybody that was in NASCAR was already drawing Social Security. That's still a big part of it, but I do think with some of the drivers and some of the things that we're doing, that's turned. But that's been a big difference. I mean, everybody that owned a race team or had anything to do with it when I first got here had been in the game for forever.
Right. I agree. I think it's getting younger, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, with Ben in studio, who's 24, and myself, who's 32, 33, yeah, it's we're definitely trying to get the sport younger for sure. So, Doug, talk to us about Sunday. Not only did you start the day as the Grand Marshal, how did you balance your day-to-day activities with the Grand Marshal activities, and then go out and you had the call on probably one of the greatest finishes in over a decade.
I wish I'd done better on the finish because I thought Blaney had won. They flashed across the line. I thought Ryan Blaney won this, and then a nanosecond later shows that Suarez won it. But it was a riveting race, and it not just the 3-wide finish, but all day. 48 lead changes. Everything about that race was epic. And I saw on Jeff Gluck's poll, 96% of the people thought it was a good race.
Most voted poll ever.
Yeah, what did the other 4% think? What was not to like? I mean, I thought that touched everything about automobile racing that you want. Passing. And it wasn't a wreck fest. It wasn't guys just getting out there face planting each other in the wall.
We had this conversation a little earlier, and I was the one guy who didn't like the race, and I liked the finish, but like I said, I thought there were guys who were deserving of a top 5, and they never got it. And to me, I felt disappointed, but I definitely watched it right to the very end. I will say that.
To finish first you must finish.
Yep.
And it's funny, it's the same people over and over again that don't finish. Figure out a way to be in the top 5. Get there to the end. Maybe you win. I mean, Joey Logano is in a huge hole right now. We've had 2 races this year, and he's been, he's crashed out. Keselowski, the same way. Denny Hamlin. They're already behind. Now, I know it's just 2 races in, but they are behind. They can't go to Vegas and have another finish of 25th or worse. Or they'll push themselves into that hole where they have to win to get to the playoffs.
Absolutely. So talk to us a little bit about, now this is back-to-back weeks for you and the PRN crew. You come back from Atlanta, head to Vegas. Talk to us about what goes into this week for you guys from a travel and industry standpoint.
Well, I live north of Charlotte in a town called Salisbury, and I'll be on a plane tomorrow at around 2:30 flying to Vegas and get out there. I give myself a day when I get to Vegas. One, I like Vegas. I enjoy gambling and hanging out and having a nice meal. But then, you need a day to kind of time shift. And then all of our people fly in. We all fly in independently because most of the crew that actually calls the race are all independent contractors. Only myself and Brad Gilley work for Speedway Motorsports full time. Everybody else has another job. Some of them are in the industry. Some of them work in banking and retail and other things. But over time, they become key freelancers. So we all meet. We have a meeting. We know when we're supposed to go. And, we're usually the first people at the racetrack and about the last people to leave.
Current or former drivers have been a part of NASCAR broadcasts forever. And outside of that being valuable to the fans' understanding of the sport, how have the drivers you've worked with helped craft your work in the booth?
PRN's a little bit different in the sense that we've not had a consistent ex-driver in the booth. Benny Parsons worked with us many years ago. Buddy Baker did some. Ross Chastain did the Xfinity race. My philosophy, and this is just the Doug Rice philosophy of looking and broadcasting a race, on the radio, the time is so precious that we're describing play-by-play, here's who's running where, that I don't feel the overwhelming need to have an analyst. Now, other people feel differently. MRN has Rusty Wallace for some of their races, and Rusty does a great job. So I will tell you this, the handful of races that we've had Ross Chastain in the booth, he has been beyond excellent. He is. And the other day he says, don't tell me what I'm doing right. Tell me what I need to do better. And I'm going like, I got nothing for you. I don't have fandoms, but I really like his persona and what he brings to the racing game, by the way.
Now, do you have maybe over the, 36 years that you've been calling races, do you have a particular memory of one of your calls or a race that stands out to you to this day?
The race at Indy in the Brickyard 400 when Tony Stewart won is big because he's the favorite son up there. It's not Jeff Gordon. And I love Jeff, great guy, but Tony Stewart's the man in Indy. And he'd always wanted to win there, and he was leading with about 10 laps to go, and you could feel the crowd. That's back when we still had 200,000 people coming to Indy for the Brickyard 400. And they're rumbling, and they're starting to make noise, and I was thinking, this is big. This is really, really important. And I remember thinking as he led the last lap and he's coming back around, I was going to call. I said, don't screw this up. Make sure you get this right. And I felt like I did a good job on that one. That was one I anticipated. Another one that's more recent was the Roval at Charlotte, when the first time we ran on the road course at Charlotte, when Martin Truex Jr. and Jimmy Johnson took each other out and Ryan Blaney won. And you just kind of knew coming around, I thought, these guys, neither one are going to get to the finish line. And they didn't. So those are a couple. I've had so many great races to call. The dirt race at Bristol when Briscoe wrecked at the end and Kyle Busch came on and won. He had no business winning that race. The leaders took each other out. Those kind of moments are singular in your memory.
What track do you cover on a regular basis that gives you like the most surprising finishes you've ever seen? Unpredictable.
Hard to argue against Atlanta right now.
Yeah, that's true.
Bristol does. You don't know. You don't know until they get to the finish line. Because if guys are within reach of each other, they'll take each other out up there. So Bristol gives you a lot of heart-stopping moments. The first race we did at Bristol that PRN did was the I didn't mean to wreck him. I just wanted to rattle his cage race that Earnhardt won.
Yep, that's exactly how I got roped in. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So, a couple more questions before we let you go tonight so you can rest up to head out to Vegas. Final season of calling action for PRN. Do you have anything on your bucket list you want to check off? Obviously, Daytona was one of them, but anything or any spots in any of the...
Daytona, I got to call, I got to do the start-finish or the command at Atlanta, and those were two biggies. Be consistent, don't slow down on this. And one of the reasons that I'm retiring is because I still feel like I've got a pretty good game at this, and I didn't want somebody to come up and tap me on the shoulder and go, "Hey, don't you think it's time to go look at real estate?" And that's one of the reasons I'm out. I don't really have anything big to check off. Just finish strong, have some good race calls, have some fun. I'm getting a few little accolades, and my wife told me, she goes, "Enjoy this, because when you retire, there's no more of that." So I said, "Okay, I will."
Excellent. And, of course, got to tie New England into this somehow. Obviously, you'll be up here in New Hampshire the end of June. You'll be in New Hampshire. We're in Massachusetts, but you'll be in New Hampshire in June. Anything about the state of New Hampshire, your trip up here, you really like?
I love New England. My wife loves New England. I've driven the Kankamankas Highway 2 or 3 times. I still haven't seen any moose. They tell me they're there, but I think it's a myth.
I live here. But I've never seen them either.
And everybody says, "Well, you got to go further north." And I'm going, I'm in New Hampshire. I can't go further north. But anyway, I love New England. I love the people, the food, the scenery. I grew up in western North Carolina, which is a lot like the New Hampshire, Vermont area. So, and I'm not just saying that because I'm on your show and you guys are in Mass. I just love that area. It's one of the places I wish we went twice a year instead of once a year, because it's just that cool. And the racetrack provides a pretty good show. The modified race at New Hampshire may be the best race every year annually. It's always got a dramatic finish. And the stock car guys put on a pretty good show there too. So I am all in, especially for the New England part of New England. Metropolitan towns to me are all kind of the same, but I really like it there.
Excellent. Been speaking with Doug Rice, who is the president and one of the co-anchors of the Performance Racing Network. Last question before we let you get out of here. How do you want to be remembered to the racing fans once retirement comes along?
The person that told a good story and that cared about the fans. And I will tell you this quick tale. We were at Indianapolis for the very first race, and I met the guys that run the Indianapolis Motor Speedway radio network. At that time, PRN only did 2 races a year, the 2 Charlotte races. And the guy that ran the network came up and he goes, "Well, what do you do for a living?" And he knew what I did. I said, "Well, I work for PRN. We broadcast NASCAR races." And he goes, No, that's not what you do. And that's not the business you're in. And I kind of got a little agitated. And he goes, "You're in the transportation business." And I thought, okay, fine. And he goes, "Your job is to transport the person driving down the interstate or in the garage or on their bass boat from where they are to here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway or Charlotte Motor Speedway or whatever football game you're doing." And I went, crap, he's right. I'm in the transportation business. And I think about that every time we go to the booth. And my team that's sort of the thing that they talk to me about. "We're going to go transport today." Yes, we are. Because if we can take you through our voices from where we are and put you there, then we've done our job. But if I'm a good storyteller and I kind of understood the fans and what they wanted, then, if I'm remembered for that, I'll be happy.
Excellent. Doug Rice joining us here on Miles on Motorsports tonight on 95.9 WATD. Doug, we will see you at a track soon. I know I'll see you in New Hampshire, but have fun out there. Get to Vegas safely, and we'll be listening.
All right, thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate you. Doug Rice on the show here on 95.9 WATD.